Hey, sixth grade, it's time for us to get a little crazy and have a little bit more fun with percentages. The lesson for today is just going to build on top of what we have already learned. So we have one whole learning goal for this lesson, and our learning goal is, very simply, I will determine the percentage. Yep. Just checking my notes and making sure. I will determine the percent of a number. So make sure you hit pause, get that in your notes because you're going to need that. I will determine the percent of a number. So we're going to start by solving a problem using several different methods. So our problem is this. As your math teacher, Mrs. West wants you to determine 25% of 44. How in the world are we going to figure out how many students, let's say, is 25% of 44? So there are several ways that we can solve this, and you guys need to make sure you take notes on all of them. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to decide which method works best for you, and you can use that to answer the problems at the end of the video. So let's start with the multiplication by a fraction method. So we know that 25% is also the same thing as 25 over 100, correct? So when we simplify that, we know that that is 1/4. Well, we can take 1/4 and multiply it times 44. We'll put a 1 under that 44. And when we cross simplify, 4 goes into itself once, 4 goes into 44 11 times. 1 times 11 equals 11. 1 times 1 is 1. So our answer is 11. 11 is 25% of 44. Another method that we can use to find 25% of 44 is by using decimals rather than fractions. So we know that 25% is also equal to 25 hundredths, because remember how we've learned in the last couple of videos, you just move the decimal point over 2 spots. So we can multiply 25 hundredths times 44. All right, so 4 times 5 is 20, carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 2 is 10. So we put our 10 down there. Put the X or the 0, whichever one it is that you use to save your spot here. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry that 2 again. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So now we have to add all of these together, 0, 0, 1, and 1. And then, like we learned in our multiplying of decimals, you have to count over all the decimal spots up here. So we have 1, 2, nothing down here. So we count over 1, 2 decimal places, and boom, 11. 11 is still 25% of 44. That time we just used decimals instead of fractions. Our next strategy is using mental math. Now I realize mental math, it means I need to be doing it all in my head, but I'm going to write out some of what's going on in my head just so you guys can see. So I know that 25% is half of 50%, right? And 50% would be half of 44. So I know in my head that if I divide 44 by 2, I will get 22, right? So now I'm down to 50%. Well, if I take that 22 and I divide it by another 2, that gets me 11. Now, for mental math, you do that all in your noggin, all right? But just for the sake of this awesome video that I know you guys love watching all the time, I did my mental math on the screen for you. And then we have one more strategy left to go. Our final strategy is just simply dividing. Since 25% is equal to 1/4, we're just going to divide 44 by 4. So 44 divided by 4. 1 goes into 4 one time. Or, yeah, 4 goes into 4 one time. Let's subtract that. And then 4 goes into that. Oops, wait, we dropped the 4 down. All right, 4 goes into that 4 one time. We subtract 4. We wind up with 0. All right, so that is just another strategy that you can use when you are trying to figure out what part of something is the percentage. What the percent is, how many of what part, whole, whatever. Oh my goodness. I think I need to go to bed. Might be a little tired. Okay, we're going to do 3 problems together, and you may use your preferred strategy for solving these. I'm just going to show you some of my work on the screen. So let's say we need to find 7% of 80. How on earth are we going to do that? Now, something important to include in your notes is that the word of, it means multiply. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. So in this problem, 7% of 80, well, we need to multiply 7/100ths by 80, because you just move that decimal point over and add the 0. So, except I'm going to stack these things up on top of each other. So 7/100ths times 80, well, 0 times 0 is 0. Put the little x as the place marker. 8 times 7 is 56. 8 times 0 is 0. Add 5. Now we add all of these together. 0. 0 plus 6 is 6. And 5 plus nothing is 5. So now we move the decimal point over 1, 2 places, and 7% of 80 equals 5 6/10. All right, our next one, 8% of 300. Well, let's do the whole multiplying with a fraction thing. So we know that when we're talking percents, we're talking parts of 100. So 8 over 100 times 300 is going to equal something or another. Let's find out. Well, how many times 100 can go into itself once? 100 can go into 300 3 times. So 8 times 3 equals 24. And 24 is 8% of 300. Not too tricky yet, is it? All right, here's the last one we're going to do together, and then I have 3 problems for y'all to do in your math binders. So let's find 60% of 232. And this time let's convert our percentage to a decimal, and then we're going to multiply. So we'll move the decimal point over 1, 2 spaces, which means oh, for Pete's sake, where did that go? There's the 2 decimal places for the 2 zeros and 100. And now we have to multiply 232. Whoops, let's try that again. 232 times 6/10. All right, so 6 times 2 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus 1 gives us 19. Carry that 1 again. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 1 is 13. Now, we don't have any decimal places up here, but we do have one right here. So in our answer, we need to move the decimal point over 1 spot. So 139.2 is 60% of 232. Okay, here are the 3 problems that I want you to do in your math binder, and make sure you bring them back to school with you so that I can take a look and see that you've done your notes and you've done your problems at the end of our video. So our first one is 15% of 55. And remember that the word of means to multiply, so you need to figure out what 15% of 55 is, and it's going to include some multiplication. All right? Your second one is 12% of 320. And there's that word of again, so you have more multiplying. And then the last one is 37% of, multiply, 37% of 120. All right, so make sure you get those in your notes, and I will see you all soon.